You are listening to Fantha Tracks.
Because of the following special program, Wonder Woman and the Incredible Hulk will not be presented this evening.
It's time to get all your Star Wars news in a single file. This is Making Tracks. Here are your hosts, Mark Newbold and Mark Mulcaster.
It's not true. That's impossible.
You're listening to Making Tracks. I'm your co-host Mark Newbold, and joining me today is a man who is so dedicated. If he was a Jedi, he'd never return because he'd never leave. It's Mark Mulcaster. Mate, how you doing?
Yeah, I'm pretty good, dude. I am now back in the UK, having had a couple of weekends doing stuff with a band in Europe and what have you, which sounds very rock and roll. And to be fair, it kind of was. But yeah, I'm now back, fully focused on Star Wars and yeah, what's coming up. How's things with you, dude? How's your week in Star Wars been?
My week in Star Wars has been very, very good. I had the opportunity to chat with a few of the folks behind Star Wars Visions, which we'll hear the audio of
cool.
later in the episode, and seen Season 2, or Volume 2 as they call it, and it's awesome. And really? I don't think I'm giving anything away by saying that if you were at Celebration and you saw the Aardman episode, I Am Your Mother, that was just awesome. So, but before then, yeah, it's been a busy Star Wars week. We're talking about Return of the Jedi 40th as well. Went to see Jedi at the cinema with Jonathan Hipkiss from Fantha Tracks and Chris from Toys of the Jedi, and his mate James, and Ruth came along, and John's girlfriend Christina came along. So there was a bunch of us went to see it, and it was absolutely fantastic. And they gave away those beautiful posters that they've done with the new artwork on. That was awesome seeing that again, just full on in your face. Now here's a question. We're getting straight into the questions now. I would say I've comfortably seen Jedi easily 100 times, probably blown way through that. I watched it on the big screen, and it's not like I've not watched it on the big screen before, but it's funny what your eye gets drawn to every time you watch something.
Yeah.
I kind of made a point of not looking at the obvious because I've seen that 100 times. When Boosh goes through the audience chamber to defrost Han Solo, if you look at Jabba's dais, Bib Fortuna's girlfriend, she's lying on Jabba's dais, and I'd never noticed that before. Never noticed that before.
Do you know what? It's very funny that you said that because I was kind of very similar. So I saw it last night. So literally, I landed, got home, had 2 hours, and then we were out at the cinema. I was quite happily comfortable in the fact that I was probably going to fall asleep in the screening because we'd only had 3 hours kip the night before. So I was on a massive sleep deficit. But the lights went down. The thing that always makes me kind of really settle in is that obviously that Fox fanfare, which is now so rare for us to get that. It felt kind of odd a little bit actually having that at the start of the film. But then, exactly, as soon as that fanfare started, and I was in and I stayed awake for the whole time. Can't say the same maybe for Karen. but very similar kind of thing. So a couple observations on that. From what I could tell, the 4K SDR version that you can see on Disney Plus, so and that's not a slight, that is just then the nature now of all these kind of anniversary releases. They're basically the film studios are taking the most recent version that they've got. It could be a Blu-ray scan or it could be like a 4K scan and put it up. So obviously seeing 4K on a big screen, yeah, some things actually just seem to stand out. And I was doing exactly the same thing, just paying more attention to all those characters in the background of Jabba's palace. And the thing is, it's weird, isn't it? Because you know, even though they haven't really tinkered with the films since Disney have acquired them in respects of content, obviously they've done these regrades, which we won't get into because it's very upsetting. But you start second guessing yourself. And at one point I was like, do you know what? I'm going to have to hook up my VHS player and I'm going to have to go back and watch Jedi from like one of my my CBS Fox versions, the white VHS ones, and just remind myself what is and what isn't there. One thing I noticed was the matte painting seemed to stand out a little bit more as matte paintings.
Totally.
Did you notice that?
Big time. Yeah, it really caught me out to the point that I was thinking, why don't they, not that you ever want to alter or change the work that Mike Pangrazione, Chris Evans and Frank Ordaz, but yeah, Han and Lando standing in front of the Falcon, you can literally see the brushstrokes, and it really stood out. You're absolutely right.
Exactly, and that is, I guess, that is the limitation of the fact that you are now scanning 35mm to 4K in that, so you're going to get as much detail as is in that print, which is cool on some respects, because it just means you just see a little bit more. But it wasn't just for a couple of the women in there. It was also like, the other henchmen, like, there's an Asian guy, isn't there, who kind of like floats around the back with kind of like a red bandana and stuff. And, they just all seemed a little bit more present and less hidden, which was quite fun.
There's still that shot where Bobber's RS stalk is on the wrong side. Yeah. And they've kind of flipped it. Feels like they should flip it back. There's lots of little things I think they could go. I mean, look, it's number 5 in the US box office this week. It's taken pretty much 4.7 million. And it was only on sort of 300 and odd screens. So that's phenomenal. And like everybody here in the UK seems to have gone and seen it.
Well, this is it. We went yesterday night and it was busy. It wasn't like a completely packed house, but it was busy. And it was quite funny. Didn't get this with the sequel trilogy films and stuff, but like people were bringing lightsabers and there's somebody in a biker scout helmet and stuff like that. I kind of feel like I should have dressed up or something. But it was nice. I was quite surprised, actually. And I think my Cineworld in Stevenage, they've now shown it all across the day, so there's multiple screenings, whereas a couple of weeks ago I think there was only maybe the 1 or 2 in the evening, but now we're doing it literally all day. So I think that in itself kind of says something, because I don't recall, and it might have been partly to do with the fact that we'd just come out of a pandemic, but when we had the 40th anniversary release of The Empire Strikes Back, didn't seem as popular. I mean, obviously our news feeds are always going to be biased. We're always going to see people doing Star Wars stuff just because of the very nature of, all our friends are pretty much Star Wars fans. But back then it felt like, there wasn't such excitement to do it. And I think it was probably more of a nervousness of the fact that we were still coming out of pandemic, and it was a little bit, some people hadn't been to a cinema for 2 or 3 years, and that, this time it seems like it's been really nice. And it is fun because actually you think about Jedi in itself sometimes isn't always people's favourite original trilogy film, but it actually seems like this has given it a lot of love, and I think that's quite nice. And also I think in some respects makes me feel a little bit regrettable that there wasn't such a big deal made about it at Celebration. I think they probably could have done a little bit more to really celebrate the 40th anniversary.
Yeah, I think there was a D23 screening, but you had to be a D23 member.
Exactly,
and they did give the poster away, and we knew that it was coming, but it kind of feels like, and this is a positive, it feels like it was announced quite late, and that people have been pleasantly surprised. When we went to see it in Birmingham, I'd say it was comfortably 3/4 full, which surprised us. And there was definitely a buzz. There was some 501st guys or UKG guys in the foyer, and there was people milling about, very much into it. Empire's my favourite, but obviously with the pandemic and everything, it kind of got lost in the mix, so it didn't really get the love that you would have liked to have thought it would have got. But now we're only 4 years away from A New Hope being 50, and I wonder whether they'll be thinking now already, put that out there, not make it like for the last time kind of thing, because never say the last time, because I'm sure until somebody at Lucasfilm probably late last year thought, let's put Jedi out for the 40th, just for a weekend, just for the fans, and let's see how it goes. And all of a sudden, they've brought in, like I say, 4.7 million in the States on 475 theatres. Whatever it might have done internationally as well, you probably double that if you look globally. $10 million, let's say, for a film that's readily available on Disney+.
Yeah, it's not
money for old rope in the best way.
Yeah, exactly. And that is, I think, the one thing that I found quite pleasantly surprising was the fact that, these films are now completely available. You don't need to worry about having to go and dig out a Blu-ray. It's on your Sky Q box. It's, on your smart TV or your smartphone. You can literally watch these at any point in the day, which is fantastic for those who get that itch. We do sometimes take Star Wars a little bit for granted these days, which of course we're only going to because it's now not the big event as it used to be, the big everybody stop what you're doing, there's Star Wars. Now it's like Star Wars all the time, which means a different paradigm. But then it's also nice to take a step back and just kind of go, God, these films are great. The original trilogy, fantastic. And last year, look at me, last year I spent the whole of a year going to a cinema to watch Bond films to celebrate the 60th release of Dr. No. Films that have made a cultural impact will always be slightly relevant, but also I think there's always going to be an audience, and so therefore hopefully they will never stop being something that like the film studios will think, let's put it out. Because everything is now done digitally, you create a digital cinema print. Basically, it's a package. It's like a folder which has got your vision and your 5:1 mixing and all that kind of stuff. It's either streamed or downloaded by the cinema. You don't have the overheads of physical prints that you need to make. So therefore, the actual cost of putting on a one-off screening of whatever, like Rambo for the 35th anniversary or whatever, or Die Hard and stuff. Actually, for the film studios, it's kind of like a fairly cost-effective no-brainer because it's just a little bit of extra income, which now people aren't buying Blu-rays. Most stuff is available on streaming and stuff like that. They're probably quite happy to kind of get that little extra kind of revenue bump every now and again. So I think it's fantastic, and I hope that we do more of it. I think it'd be great to get the prequels back into the cinema and do exactly the same kind of thing for them.
Hello, I'm Dennis Lawson, and you're listening to Fantha Tracks.
Unbelievably, it's 6 years since Carrie Fisher passed away this year, and she will finally receive her richly deserved star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. The ceremony takes place on May the 4th, which is, of course, perfect, and Billie Lourd, her daughter, will accept the star on her behalf, which will be near the iconic El Capitan Theatre. I was kind of blown away, and we've known this for a while, that Carrie hadn't had a star on the Walk of Fame, not only for her work as Princess Leia, of course, which is kind of her signature role, but for all the other stuff she'd done, the novel writing, the film work she'd done, the script doctoring she'd done, just being Carrie Fisher. Did it surprise you when you learnt that Carrie hadn't got that star?
Yeah, pretty much. When I saw the news from Fantha Tracks, I was like, oh, well, that's awesome. And I was like, hasn't she got one already? Because quite a few people have them and stuff, so it's absolutely 100% totally correct that Carrie should be honoured in this way. I just always assumed that she already had one. You kind of would have thought Carrie Fisher would have been there already.
Totally. She's the 2,754th star on the Walk of Fame.
Blimey.
It's hard to imagine that there are 2,753 people who've had their stars before Carrie Fisher. But hey-ho, here we are. So now, if you're a Star Wars fan and you either live in the area or are visiting, you can chart a path where you can see stars of the original trilogy, the sequels and the prequel trilogies, and actually sort of plot a path through Hollywood, essentially, to find these Star Wars places. Obviously, the footprints of R2 and 3PO outside Man's Chinese Theatre and all that sort of stuff. So there's this kind of a Star Wars Walk of Fame as well. I wonder, though, I think the process to get a star takes, I believe, about 5 years. So
that would make sense.
And especially after somebody's passed away, I think it is after they pass, and she passed in 2016, so it is a 5-year process posthumously, if that makes sense. This is perfectly timed, given that it's on May the 4th.
From what I understand, it's a nomination process as well, isn't it? Like, you can nominate somebody, and I think there's like a different category that we need to fall into, kind of like motion pictures, television, radio, and what have you. There's like a panel or something who decides, so that's probably partly the reason why maybe it's taken that little bit longer, and also there's planning permission, I guess, from the local kind of councils and stuff like that. But the good thing is the fact that we can actually watch the ceremony live online, so that's quite cool. So that's going to happen at 11:30 Pacific Central, so that's going to be 6:30, something like that, on Thursday, May the 4th, which seems very appropriate. So if you get a chance, swing by walkoffame.com and have a watch of the live stream, because I think it'd be quite fun to see.
I think that would be a great way to spend May the 4th. What other plans have you got for May the 4th? Because I know it's the gimmick Star Wars holiday. It doesn't mean anything other than it sounds like something Star Wars. But it has become the hallmark day that we celebrate the saga and such. Have you got anything planned for that day?
There's Star Wars Visions. That I will probably be watching. There are events, or there's been events this weekend and some of them following weekend and stuff where the Rebel Legion and the 501st and Mando Mercs and everybody else have been invited to various different places. Normally it's like toy stores and stuff like that to kind of help promote things, to celebrate May the 4th. But really what it is just to add a couple of extra credits into the pocketbooks of Lucasfilm and Disney, and Hasbro. So there's that, but, I'll make sure that I wear a Star Wars t-shirt if I'm working. But then it's more a rare occasion that I don't wear a Star Wars t-shirt to work. So maybe I normally mark it by not wearing it. I might wear a Star Trek t-shirt.
Oh,
I might actually have to go and buy a Star Trek t-shirt before that. But yeah, I don't have any traditions. Normally, if I've got time, if I'm not doing anything really kind of important at work and stuff with clients and stuff, I will stick on A New Hope. And even if that's just in the background, and if I've got one of those days where I have no clients in with me for the whole week, or the whole day even, I will just kind of stream the original trilogy until it's time to go home. So yeah, how about yourself? Have you got anything planned?
You mentioned May 25th. May 25th is the day I will really celebrate it, and generally I will put on A New Hope and watch Star Wars on the 25th of May. That's the day I personally really mark it. But on May the 4th, it's so much fun. Lucasfilm and StarWars.com really get behind it. It's a business. All of the franchisees will push their products and give you good deals as best as they can. And it has become, over the last well, I don't know, what would you say? Sort of 10, 15 years? I'd say it's kind of become the day, hasn't it?
Definitely the last 10 years. Before that, it was still kind of like tongue-in-cheek and stuff. Definitely. And certainly, obviously, since Disney has picked it up, you kind of think for Disney, they must love it. You acquire a franchise which has its own holiday built in, just by, without having to really do any kind of work, which is, for them, they're probably thinking that's fantastic. And like you said, for a licensee, if you've got something that you haven't had to announce earlier or you've been holding off, May the 4th is the perfect time to do it. So it's just sometimes actually making sure you can get that out and get promoted so it doesn't get kind of like lost in the mix.
Hi, this is Andy Seacombe, otherwise known as Watto, and you're listening to Fantha Tracks.
Great news, Fantha Tracks are heading up to Star Wars Fan Fun Day again. It used to be in Burnley, now it's in Blackburn. It takes place on the 14th of May. Fantha's going to be there. There's a whole bunch of us going up. We're going to be taking our wonderful big booth that we debuted at Star Wars Celebration Europe. Loads of plans. We want to talk to as many guests as possible, as many fans as possible, take pictures, hand out some free swag. We're getting some little exclusive badges made for Fan Fun Day as well. We're doing Dinner with the Stars on the evening before. Mark, are you going to be at Star Wars Fan Fun Day in Blackburn this time?
Yes.
So what's your plans? You're coming up with the Rebel Legion?
Rebel Legion will be there. I don't know how many going up, but it has been on the bucket list. But yes, I'm really looking forward to it, and hopefully can don a Fantha shirt as well at some point.
I can guarantee the royal we, have been going for a long time. Never anything other than fun. The people are there to enjoy themselves and celebrate Star Wars. The guests are always interesting. Paul and Neil put on a great show. So I'll be amazed if you don't come out of Fan Fun Day going, okay, yeah, it's a bit of a slug to get there, but we're doing that again.
No, I think so. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. And I think we've got some fantastic guests, and everything that all the Rebel Legion members have said has always said that it's like definitely something that you should try and get up and do. So if you're in the area, you should head over. And if you're not, make a point of maybe booking a hotel and then head over anyway, because I think it's going to be a fantastic little time.
It is. We're going to cover it on Fantha Tracks TV, Fantha Tracks podcast, obviously here on Fantha Tracks Radio, and specifically on Making Tracks. But there are other Fantha Trackers going up that have their own podcast, so there will be potential content from all over the place, and of course on the site and definitely on the socials. So stay tuned for more coverage from Star Wars Fan Fun Day, May 14th at Ewood Park at Blackburn. Really looking forward to it.
For everything in one location, daily news, reviews, interviews, podcasts, video, and social media feeds, bookmark FanthaTracks.com for Star Wars news 24/7, 365.
May the 4th, it's a busy day, and there's lots happening, of course, across the Star Wars galaxy, but one of the key things that will be landing on Disney Plus is the second volume of Star Wars Visions. We had the fantastic opportunity to talk to James Waugh, Josh Rimes, and Jacqui Lopez, part of the creative team behind Star Wars Visions, about what we can expect in Volume 2. There's all sorts of cool stuff coming. I've seen the episodes. They're all some fantastic fun. We'll have a review of it on Fantha Tracks very, very soon. So for now, have a listen to myself catching up with Jacqui, James, and Josh, talking all about Season 2, Volume 2 of Star Wars Visions.
Watched the season, absolutely loved it. Did you know there was going to be a Season 2 when you did Season 1, or was it the success of Season 1 that sort of beget Season 2? It
was the latter. So, we always, we really believed in Volume 1, and we had so much support and truth from Kathy, from everybody. I think everybody thought it was a really exciting, new, kind of bold expression for Star Wars, but you just never know if it's going to land. It was out of the norm of what we were doing at the time, and we had to see what audiences think and whether or not it was going to resonate. And we were pleasantly surprised that it did resonate so well, and people did like it and loved it as much as we. We thought we had something special, so it was really good to see that land. And then it was really a matter of, okay, let's expand this, let's explore this. And we always thought that Visions could be a kind of broader canvas and be something that could go beyond any just one medium, one form. That's kind of, it went from there. We just really believe that this could expand and really showcase art from around the world, and see how Star Wars resonated in all these different cultures, and I think we've done that.
Definitely. I mean, anime was always I say obvious, that sounds a bit pat, but you know, a logical choice. And to expand it to these, as you say, expressions makes all the sense. I've got to ask, as a Brit, Aardman. I mean, wow, how on earth did somebody take that and put those two things together?
We're huge fans of Aardman. Yeah. I mean, we've all been, huge fans for a long time, and never even fathomed that we'd have an opportunity to collaborate. But then when this came along, we thought, oh my gosh, that could be like chocolate and peanut butter. So, you're like you said, it's not a natural marriage. So you worried about, is it just going to be a skit? Is it just going to be a funny little thing? But, they pitched a few stories to us, and all having lots of humor and feeling very Aardman. This one had a true human story at its heart between a mother and daughter, and it felt like it could fit in that Star Wars galaxy. So it worked. We think it worked out really well. It has nice elements of both.
It feels like if you're not releasing cuddly toys with arms that come off, or
you're missing an opportunity.
Gotta sell our product, guys.
Right. Yeah. When you have ideas and things start being spitballed, I mean, do you approach studios? Do they pitch to you? What's the process for making, the teams that worked on, say, season 2? How does that kind of organically come together, or is it organic? Is it chosen? How does it work?
It's pretty organic. Once we identify the studios, and Jackie reaches out and talks through schedule and budget, and if they have capacity. Just because animation's so busy that we were fortunate that these dream studio of ours said yes. So we were so happy that Cartoon Saloon, Aardman, and everyone else said yes. And then it's just we talk about loose framework in that the big sort of piece for volume 2 and even volume 1 had this was just the tell a Star Wars story through your own cultural perspective. That was the most important thing. We also encourage them to create new characters, and new planets, new places, and like Jackie said, Aardman pitched a handful of ideas, and it really was that personal story that grabbed us. Same with the other studios. Some studios only pitched 1 or 2 ideas, but they kind of knew they had it. And looked for us for sort of help along the way, just in crafting the drama or the cuts, or getting assets and sound effects and that kind of stuff. But that was generally the process. Is just having a personal story that they want to tell, and because they're all such great storytellers to begin with, it was a pretty great experience.
And that's how we know we're going to get something that's Star Wars, right? That feels authentically Star Wars. Is it when we're engaging with creatives that have a personal story, or have something that's kind of a universal theme or timeless, kind of relatable character story about family dynamics, or choosing, being selfless over selfish, and things like that. That's how we know we're in the right place to mine and explore with them.
And this season, you've got some awesome voice talent. I mean, Angelica Houston stood out to me, obviously. Maxine Peake, big name over here in the UK. Dennis Lawson playing Wedge, which was fantastic. How do you attract these kind of talents to a project like this?
Well, I think the studios were really partners with us in this. It was really important that we got authentic, local talent, or even if the talent was based here in the States, talent that might have have roots in some of these countries. So that was all really important, and we worked really hand in hand. Aardman has so many great talent relationships. So Maxine Peake was at the top of their list. Camille Cotten in France, Ursula Cordero in Spain. Those were all driven by the directors and by those studios, talking to us and working with us. So yeah, we were really lucky, and people love to play. Actors love to play in animation. It's a good place to let loose and have some fun. So
I hope I'm not out of line for saying that it felt to me that Love, Death and Robots felt kind of an influence in the sense that they really go out there in different styles, and this time you've really gone out there in different styles. How far out? I mean, I'm thinking the first episode, Sith, with the beautiful color palettes was really something very different. And then you get to something like I Am Your Mother, which is that classic Aardman. So how far out do you want to go? How far out would you go in that sense, that stylistic sense?
I think we're open. In all honesty, I don't think there is we haven't found it yet. There's not, we haven't hit that barrier where we've got to a point of like, this is too far. I think comes down, like I said earlier, really, it comes down to the character story and the heart and creators, filmmakers that have something to say with their art. We were joking about this earlier today, but could there be a puppet version of this? Maybe. You just don't know. I mean, like, I think that's the beauty of this framework. I don't think we should limit ourselves. I think we should hear the pitches, see the creatives that are deeply moving us and telling great stories, and see if we can find a Star Wars expression of it. I think a little of the burden is taken off of Visions from the place of, can you do black and white Kurosawa? Like, yes, that's what Vision is. It's a rich palette for that type of unexpected aesthetic. So, maybe one day we'll find it, but so far we're open to exploring what this could be.
Fantastic. Well, here's to season 3.
Thanks.
Thanks,
guys.
Not early. Thanks, Mark.
Yes, thank you.
All the best.
Okay, mate, we've got a listener's question.
Ooh.
You may like this. It's from a familiar questionnaire. It's Skyhawker. And the question is, hi, dudes. Nice to meet you both at the recent Making Tracks panel at Celebration. It was cool to be able to interact in person. Before the Mando series finale had aired, I was predicting that the Mythosaur would rise from the waters to be ridden by Bo-Katan. Obviously, this didn't happen, so do you think they are saving him for the big Filoni movie? Cheers, Mr. Skyhawker. So, Mark, what do you reckon? You think the Mythosaur moment's going to come in the film? Do you think we might see it before then? What are your thoughts?
Oh, yeah. Well, I suppose before the film, we're going to have another season, aren't we?
You'd like to think.
You'd like to think. It's definitely something that I think they're keeping in their top pocket just so that, they've got something to hang your hat on. Do they do it in the film? I don't know. We're kind of in this weird point now, aren't we, with The Mandalorian? There's been rumours and stuff about, like, Pedro's not signing back on, and it kind of almost felt like the end of season 3 was like, it could have been the end of the series.
Yeah.
Just the way it was all wrapped up. But then at the same time, most heroes never have a quiet time. They always kind of have to move on to something else because some other dangers kind of creep in. This is probably a nice starting point for season 4, which could take them on a completely different kind of avenue away from Mandalore and obviously Bo-Katan and stuff like that. But it does definitely feel like they're keeping the notion that there is a Mythosaur on Mandalore in people's minds, which means it's got to come back. Whether or not it comes back in the film or not, I don't know. It all depends upon, I guess, where we're headed at a point. You think, from what we understand, it's meant to be like you've called it the Avengers. So if that's going to be a culmination of that, could that mean that actually they need to get Ahsoka and everybody else in to help deal with a Mythosaur? Or could it be actually it's got nothing to do with Mythosaur whatsoever, and this is a red herring, and actually the film's going to be focused on what we think at the moment, which obviously is Grand Admiral Thrawn and the rise of the remnant Imperial kind of forces.
I like the fact that Mando has kind of subverted expectations in the sense that bringing Din, I was going to say Din and Din, that makes no sense, bringing Grogu and Din Djarin back together so quickly in the Book of Boba Fett. So you end season 2 thinking there's going to be a protracted amount of time when they're separated, and actually there wasn't. I think season 3, for example, we assumed the journey to the mines of Mandalore to redeem himself as a Mandalorian would take most of the season, and it was done by the 3rd episode. And then Bo-Katan comes to the fore of the storyline, which was great because there's that whole overhang of Clone Wars and Rebels stuff that kind of all factors in. But that being said, every time you guess and assume that something's going to happen in The Mandalorian, it kind of doesn't. I like that about The Mandalorian.
Absolutely.
With this, as you just said, the end of season 3, it is sort of just putting his feet up on the porch whilst the kid plays in the pool. And it kind of felt like, okay, we joke about the Looney Tunes ending, but kind of does feel like it's a conclusion to book 1 of the Din Djarin story, if you like, the Din and Grogu story. There's nothing to say that they can't pick up the storyline 3 or 4 years down the line if they want to. We've got the Daisy film coming out, which is set 15 years after The Rise of Skywalker. Probably by the time it comes out, it will only be 6 years after the end of The Rise of Skywalker. So, you can play a little bit with the timeline if you want to. Star Wars is quite cute in the sense that they don't necessarily feel, and there's a lot of exposition in Star Wars anyway, there kind of has to be to keep people up to speed, but I don't think they feel the pressure now to fill in all the gaps because they know that, for example, Del Rey, Marvel, people like that will immediately see a gap and go, Charles Soule's going to pitch an idea at, wow, that 1 year gap between here and there, can we do something there? And maybe not so much with maybe not so much with the Mandalorian stuff, because I know Favloni keep a fairly tight lid on that storytelling era. It's theirs to tell. But nevertheless, Star Wars does flashbacks a lot now. So there's always the opportunity to do flashback sequences to fill in gaps and just give you enough of a sense. And I'd like to think at some point that the reins will be loosened enough that as we move past season 3 and into Ahsoka and Skeleton Crew, that we can kind of go back in time a little bit and start filling in stories of what Din and Grogu were up to in those certainly the first 2, if not first 3 seasons. It feels like there's lots of other adventures that could be told that wouldn't particularly step on the toes of what we saw in the TV episodes.
Again, also, if you you think back to Grogu, whilst it felt like to us that he was only with Luke for a couple of weeks or a couple of days, it was what? Was it at least 6 months? Was it
a good chunk of time, I think, yeah.
Yeah. You could arguably say that, if they kind of felt the need or the desire, or they just wanted to, because they bloody well could, because it would be cool as hell, they could do like a limited series of like Luke and Grogu going off and doing some little Jedi adventures, rather than just having them on that planet and just doing the training. That, there might be a reason that they kind of get called off and stuff like that. As we know, with technology, as time goes on, it's going to be easier to do the deep fake. It's going to be cheaper, more cost effective, and also the volume, the quality that you can get out of the volume also increases and improves and becomes cheaper. And so suddenly, these little kind of projects just become a lot more accessible. Yeah. But I think also the downside, I think we had with Legends to some extent, I think when we take a step back and we can kind of argue this on one level, we could say, well, look, yes, it was a real shame, but we lost a lot of storytelling in respects of like, it's now longer not what some people consider canon. But it did start to hinder, and it would have completely cornered, I think, a lot of the creatives into doing anything. You wouldn't be able to have any of the content really that we've had if it had to adhere to everything that came before Big Refresh. And that's the same with the sequel trilogy. And I think now they're leaving gaps because they know that, like you said, they can go back, or they might want to go back, or if they don't, somebody might want to go back. In some respects, it's not necessarily a bad thing. We complained for most of the sequel trilogy, time whilst the films were in the cinema, about how there's 35 years that we know nothing about. But since then, we are finding all about that stuff, and there's no way that you could have found out everything that you needed to know about that 35-year period in those films, unless those films are going to run for about 4 or 5 hours and have a lot of exposition and a lot of flashback. So actually, this has been quite a clever and smart move, and I think I've said this all before, because it's just like, it gives people the chance to kind of go, well, okay, so we now know where the end point is. Let's subvert expectations a little bit in a healthy way and in a non-divisive way to create a whole new avenue of Star Wars storytelling that will allow people to see even more of the galaxy, meet new characters, and bring it more to life as well. So I think actually it's genius.
Star Wars now has gone beyond the concept of prequel and sequel.
It has to, yeah.
Hasn't it? It's just become such a, if you got hung up on the fact that Andor is a prequel to Rogue One and it's a prequel to A New Hope, but it's a sequel to Revenge of the Sith and blah, 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 you'd never get anywhere. Those labels don't mean in 2023 what they meant in 1999. So the fact that we can go in and do these stories, and also Harrison Ford, obviously we've got Dial of Destiny, and everybody who has seen, I mean, we've seen clips in the trailer that look amazing, but they're 1 or 2 second clips. The first 25 minutes of Dial of Destiny is a 50-year-old Indiana Jones. They must be very confident that they've nailed it now. And even Ford watches it thinking, wow, I can't believe the incredible technology that's on show here. And he himself describes it as a potent device for storytelling, which is a very interesting phrase because now, I think James Mangold had said that, they'd film on a Monday and by Wednesday they'd got a version of that 50-year-old Indy as opposed to Indy as a 70-year-old. I know Harrison's 80, but, they've got a version of that was more than watchable. And then the finessing and all of that would be done to really tighten it down and hone it in. Back in the day when they made Raiders and they'd film everything they'd got and they couldn't watch the rushes till the next day because they had to go and send it to the lab to be processed so they could bring the film out. And now they can have a CG, or essentially a CG, a deep fake, whatever you want to call it. I know Lucasfilm weren't mad keen on that phrase, but essentially that kind of technology using all these old images and footage of Harrison from back in the day. Who's got a bigger archive of Harrison Ford at that age than Lucasfilm? Nobody. So you can recreate the character and do that. Going back to your point, the whole storytelling, filling gaps. Now, all of a sudden, we had season 2 of The Mandalorian. We've had other de-aging moments. We had Ingrid Daler play a young Princess Leia at the end of Rogue One, and Guy Henry playing Tarkin, which weirdly, I watched Rogue One the other day and not forgotten, but was reminded what a brilliant film that is. But even just 7 years on, you look at the tech there and go, wow, how much has it come forward?
Yeah.
You imagine if they if they refreshed that Tarkin now with all the footage they've got or have of Peter Cushing back in the day, meters and meters of film of Carrie Fisher that they could use to create a real photoreal version. It's still based on Ingvild's performance. It's still based on Guy Henry's performance. At some point, somewhere down the line, you'll always have alien creatures. I think makeup work will change from making people look younger or making people look different or adding a bigger nose or whatever it might be. That technique will change to the point of, right, let's put 5 dots on this guy's nose and all of a sudden he's got a different nose. I'm picking nose as a silly example. So I think that's where the changes will come. Makeup for people to look younger or different will become the remit of things like deepfake, I'm using that word again, or companies like ILM. So if you want an actor to look like a younger whoever, Harrison Ford's not going to be around forever. I don't know what kind of deal or agreement he may have made with whatever company to say, if you want Han Solo to always look like me when I was 35, I'm fine with that. Like James Earl Jones has said to Reese Beecher, you may use my voice going forward as Darth Vader, and Reese Beecher do their fantastic work that they do. There's going to be agreements and there's going to be decisions made on how that's going to work. And you could just look and say, why don't we just recast, which was the older way. But now this tech has kind of reached a very special moment, it seems, with Dial of Destiny. It means that now you can go back and fill in these gaps with the characters looking consistent. I think consistency is important to Star Wars fans. That you can now go and tell a story that, what was it, Shadow of the Sith was 17 years after Jedi, I think. Really was like the midway point between Jedi and Force Awakens. And you could find enough footage of Hamill at that age and Billy Dee at that age, and you could all of a sudden go, well, actually, not that they would, but actually, wow, we could make a Shadow of the Sith movie here if we want to make it. And there's all these opportunities, so I think it's a very special time for filmmaking. But just quickly going back to Lee's question, because we've totally rambled off, I think you'll see the Mythosaur. I just hope he's more Godzilla when he's in a bad mood than Godzuki when he's in a good mood.
Well, thank you for that, Mr. Skyhawker. And yes, it was absolutely lovely to meet you for the first time at Celebration. So yes, more people should come to our events and meet us for the first time, and hopefully not for the last. But you never know. Sometimes we do leave that impression on people. If you'd like to send in a listener's question, then Mark, can you let everybody know how we can do that? Because I certainly can't.
I will do my very best. Thanks for listening to Making Tracks. If you want to be a part of the action and stay updated on all the latest Star Wars news, visit fanthatracks.com or check out the free Fantha Tracks app through the App Store to follow us on your mobile device. You can reach out to us and send in your listeners' questions by emailing radio@fanthatracks.com. Thanks to everybody else who sent in questions. It's always greatly appreciated. And as you can hear from this episode, we ramble and ramble and ramble on the most basic of questions. Comment, like and share on any of our social media feeds at Fantha Tracks, and be sure to subscribe, leave a review, preferably a 5-star one, on Amazon Music, Audible, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or your podcatcher or smart speaker of choice. And as always, thanks to James Semple for composing the Fantha Tracks intro, Adam O'Brien for our Making Tracks opening music, and Mark Daniel and Vanessa Marshall for our voiceovers. Remember to tune in to Good Morning Tatooine. It's live Sunday evenings at 9 o'clock UK time, 4 p.m. Eastern, and 1 p.m. Pacific on Facebook and YouTube. And check out our Fantha Tracks Radio Friday night rotation. It's every Friday night, 7 o'clock UK time, for new episodes of The Fantha from Down Under, Planet Layer, Desert Planet Discs, Start Your Engines, Collecting Tracks, Cannon Fodder, and special episodes of Making Tracks. And every Tuesday at 7 o'clock UK time for your weekly episode of Making Tracks. And that's me done for this episode.
Brilliant. Thank you for that. We will be back next week. Don't forget to check all your feeds and your streams, and check out the Fantha Tracks website for the next amazing Fantha Tracks podcast coming your way very, very soon. So if we don't catch up before, have a fantastic May the 4th. And everybody, remember, stay safe, take care, and May the 4th be with you.
Coming up next on Fantha Tracks Radio, it's Desert Planet Discs.